Does morality need some supernatural arbiter, or are the religious just desperate to confirm their irrational biases? That's a question that Dr. Phil Fernandes wants answered, and I don't think he's going to like the answer he gets. Morality is something that the religious talk about a lot, but really don't seem to understand. This video comes from Windmill Ministries, where Dr. Phil Fernandes makes a lot of claims about morality that simply don't stand up to any rational evaluation or even any rational understanding of the subject matter. And that's because, as should be no surprise, the religious really aren't interested in examining the subject. They just want it to confirm their already existing biases. That's why anyone who steps back to see what they're saying concludes that these people are nuts. So let's take a look.
We make moral value judgments all the time.
Yes, we do. And sorry, I'm really not trying to be mean here, but doesn't this guy sound like he's been smoking a dozen packs a day, every day for decades? I mean, it's like I'm half expecting him to say something with an electrolarynx, like Ned Grablansky on South Park. But anyway, back to the video.
What is the final arbiter of that?
Us. We are the final arbiter for all moral decisions. Now, I know you won't like that, but that's how it actually is. And I suspect I'm going to have to spend this entire video explaining basic reality to people for whom reality doesn't make them happy. This ought to be fun.
And people could say, well, it's the individual. But if that's the case, then we cannot condemn the actions of Adolf Hitler as wrong.
Sure we can. We, as a societal collective and as individuals, can make up our own minds about what Hitler or anyone else has done and decide for ourselves or as a society if we think he was wrong. Now, we can't do that objectively, and that's fine because there's no such thing as objective morality, no matter how sad some people might think that is.
The atheists can't condemn the actions of Christians as wrong. The atheists love to say, no such thing as right and wrong, therefore you Christians are wrong, to teach your morality in the public school. Well, wait a minute, if no such thing as right and wrong, Christians are never wrong. Leave us alone.
You're wrong in the sense that society has decided that religious instruction in public schools should not be permitted. Hence, anyone violating the law, as the religious tend to do, are in the wrong. This is really no different than speed limits. We, as human beings, make up speed limits. We hold people accountable for them. If you get pulled over by a cop, you can't pretend that you're not doing anything wrong because there's no objective speed limit. You're wrong because society decided, arbitrarily and subjectively or not, that you can only go a certain speed, and if you exceed it, you can and will be held accountable.
And, so it's got to come from something higher than the individual if we're going to condemn individuals. So some might say, well, then it comes from society. But there's two problems with that.
Neither of which are actually problems, I'm sure. This is, as all moral arguments are, a matter of terrible expectations. The belief that we need some magical man in the sky to tell us what to do, otherwise there can be no rules at all. But this is demonstrably false because we make up rules all the time and it doesn't matter if people are happy about it or not. That's just how things work.
One is, well, then one society like America couldn't condemn the actions of another society like the Taliban or Nazi Germany or the old Soviet Union as wrong.
Sure we can. We probably can't do anything about it, but we can condemn anything that we want using whatever standards we decide to adopt, and they can do the same thing to us. Is either side objectively wrong? No. But only an idiot would think that objectivity has anything to do with morality.
Each society would decide. Also, the problem with that is the moral reformer is always wrong then.
No, if the moral reformer can convince individuals or society as a whole to change their collective opinion, then their reforms actually take place and their ideas get adopted by said society.
If society is right, Martin Luther King Jr. was wrong to stand against his society. So even moral relativists appeal to something higher than society.
Not so, because no one is saying that society is right, and no one is saying that society is wrong. Right and wrong are subjective concepts. We are saying that people, collectively, are free to determine what they want to accept within their social boundaries and what they want to think is wrong, and so long as that society continues to have those views, so long as they make laws to defend those views, then those views are true for that particular society. But you get a lot of people who unfortunately want to be slaves to some all-powerful moral source instead of dealing with the world that they actually live in.
So some might say, well, world consensus. Well, the world consensus has been miserably wrong in the past. It used to be the woman was considered property of the man, didn't have any rights, slavery was perfectly permissible.
All of which came from religion, you might notice. In places where slavery is still permitted, it is 100% based on religious belief. Same as everywhere that women are treated as property. It's all religious. So the idea that we need religion to show us how to be moral, it's just laughable on its face.
You know, all kinds of horrible moral atrocities in the past that the world consensus said was fine.
And he's showing a picture of a Holocaust memorial, ignoring the fact that Hitler was a Christian who was convinced that God had ordered him to murder the Jews. Yeah, I know, they don't want to talk about that, but it doesn't stop it from being true.
But the fact of the matter is that even moral relativists will try to change the world consensus.
And they can. That's what happens when morals are subjective. They can and do change over time. And this is exactly what we should expect to see if morality is based on individual and collective subjective moral positions. Why don't the religious recognize just how badly supported their silly ideas actually are?
So whether they're fighting for gay rights or trying to fight global warming, or even if atheists just think the world's going to be a lot better if we get more atheists, they're trying to change the world consensus.
Which I agree with. The fewer delusional people on the planet, the better. And that's not to say that all atheists are rational, but they're certainly better than your typical Christian or Muslim.
And so they're appealing to a moral standard above all individuals, all societies, and any world consensus.
They are doing nothing of the sort. They are saying that maybe what a person or the culture or the world is doing right now is wrong, and we need to rethink our views on what is moral. They are doing exactly the opposite of what this guy is claiming.
And then they will often condemn actions of the past, try to build a better today, and then try to build a better tomorrow.
Exactly. But if there was an objective morality, then moral views would never change. They couldn't change. They would have to remain consistent for all time, because that's the very definition of objective. But if we had objective moral standards, then why have things been so screwed up in the past? Why were there slaves? Something that, as I pointed out previously, have been defended primarily by the religious throughout history. How did the religious get to be so wrong?
So they're actually appealing to a moral standard above all individuals, all societies, any world consensus, and they're acting like this moral standard doesn't change with time.
They are not remotely doing that. They are, as I said before, doing exactly the opposite of what you're pretending they're doing. What's wrong with you? How are you so blind to reality?
Well, if that doesn't imply the existence of a moral lawgiver above all individuals, all societies, any world consensus, and it's a moral lawgiver that doesn't change with time, I don't know what does.
You can't imply something that you can't prove to be real which again is exactly what he's doing. Even if you could prove that objective morality is real, that doesn't imply a moral lawgiver. In fact, if you want to think that there's a moral lawgiver, then clearly there is no objective morality because you're operating under the subjective ideas of said lawgiver. The only way for something to be objective is to have it be without opinion or personal feelings, something that's clearly not the case if you have an individual mind involved. These people do not know what words mean. Yeah, okay, whatever. Sorry, I'm not impressed and neither should anybody else. This is yet another example of people who haven't got the slightest idea what morality is, what objectivity is, or how the world actually operates. I guess in their view, black is white, up is down, and fantasy is reality. Because how you can get from this bizarrely mixed up position to anything resembling the real world is completely beyond me. Then again, this is religious thought we're talking about, and that is inherently irrational and based on feels over reals, something that I've pointed out many times in the past is not valid in an intellectual discussion. But also, as I've said, these people aren't interested in intellectual discussions. They're making videos for the brainless sheep that follow them around and need confirmation that what they believe is valid and that they should keep being led to the intellectual slaughter. The apologists, whether they want to admit it or not, need the sheep, so they keep getting paid without doing any actual work. So they just keep spouting it for the paycheck, whether they actually believe any of it or not. That's why these videos keep getting made, and why I spend so much time pointing out their flaws. Someone needs to take these shysters to task and call them out on their bullshit. And I guess I've been elected, even though my voice is small, but it's not going away.